Kathy Hochul has sold out New Yorkers and made a deal with extremists who don't share our values. Not only has Hochul aligned herself with big government socialists like Zohran Mamdani and AOC, Hochul is now beholden to them.
I've got some advice for Bruce Blakeman. If he wants New York to also become more affordable, and I'm laser focused on this, this is what I wake up thinking about, is how to protect New Yorkers from crime and also how to make New York more affordable. So this has been my agenda, so I welcome him to the conversation. But have him call Donald Trump.
Welcome to New York One's Off Topic on Politics. I'm New York One investigative reporter Courtney Gross. There has been a shakeup in the race for governor. After failing to secure some support from the left wing or progressives in the state party, Antonio Delgado, the current lieutenant governor, backed out of the race for governor this year. There will no longer be a primary for Governor Kathy Hochul. In addition, Republicans named their nominee, Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau County executive. We will get you all caught up on where the race for governor stands. In addition, Mayor Mamdani headed up to Albany in what is commonly referred to as Tin Cup Day. That means he goes up basically begging for money. How did that go? We will let you know. And our Bobby Cuza is here to discuss all of that.
Hey, Courtney, are we not talking about the Super Bowl?
We can talk about Bad Bunny.
We can talk about that. We asked Mayor Mamdani about Bad Bunny the other day in our exclusive interview. He was a fan.
The best thing, Bob Hardt, about not having a primary is that Bad Bunny is doing a European tour, and some of those European tour dates are around the June primary. So I'm going to take that week off and go. Wow. Or Bob Hardt is here. I'm telling you now, I'm going to take that week off to go see Bad Bunny.
I didn't know you were a super fan.
Wow.
Not really a super
Didn't you used to do this with the Grateful Dead? Didn't you used to follow them around? I think I'm right about that, don't I? She's not answering. She's just laughing nervously. So.
No.
Good halftime show, though.
Okay.
For
anyway,
sure.
All right. Let's actually inform our viewers and listeners of what is actually happening outside of the world of Bad Bunny. We were shocked. Were we shocked?
No, not shocked.
Okay.
Were you shocked?
I feel like I was actually off that day when this happened, when Delgado dropped out of the race. Or I did the morning show and was working from home. I can't remember. Either way, I wasn't in the office. So I was just following what was happening in the newsroom on WebEx. And Bob was shocked.
I was shocked?
I think you said I'm shocked.
I don't, it's one of those it's one of these campaigns that we've seen them where they're not doing that well, but they still come to the finish line, meaning they make it to primary day and then they get like 15% of the vote. And you're like, oh, why do they bother? So we've all seen races like that. And I think Delgado, after not getting the 25% of the vote at the Democratic convention that he needed to get on the ballot automatically, suddenly was facing, okay, I need to spend a lot of money now petitioning to get on the ballot. And I think he got like 17% of the vote.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, he was kind of close. I think he thought maybe he'd had a shot. So that's one problem. He would have to petition and spend time and money petitioning. And then the Working Families Party, which has a line in November, he was, I think, hoping maybe they'll give me the line. And they didn't. And they just gave it to what we call placeholders, that means that they're going to make a decision later on. So I think between those two things and also Mayor Mamdani endorsing the governor, I think he's just like, do I really want to be this person who gets 15% of the vote at the end of the day? So I think that's why he threw his towel in. They were supposed to be on Inside City Hall that night. He and his running mate, India Walton, were all like, oh, this is going to be good. It'll be interesting to make the case, because it really was a great political week for Hochul. Here's the counter voice. Didn't happen.
Did you guys get the call after the news dropped that they were not going to be appearing on the show? It might have actually been good.
Like simultaneous.
It would have been fun to have him on the show anyways and talk about why he dropped out.
Yeah, it would have been good. They just didn't want to. And it's really interesting because Delgado, at a different point in his political career, I would say, because he beat John Faso, right, and when he ran for Congress, I think that his political stock at one point was really high, and now it's completely collapsed.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. He won a congressional seat in a swing district, and now I don't know what he's going to do. Well, he's still got a job for the next 10 months,
I mean,
11
at
months.
least for the next couple of years, he did torpedo his political career. I mean, because if you are a sitting LG and you turn your back against your boss, the governor, I mean, who is in effect the head of the state Democratic Party, you're not really going to have anywhere to go within that state Democratic Party, at least for the foreseeable future.
And this has happened with past lieutenant governors on both sides of the aisle. Betsy McCoy Ross, who was George Pataki's first lieutenant governor, had such a bad feud with him that she switched parties and ran against him. And then Marianne Krupczak, who was Hugh Carey's lieutenant governor, she did the same thing. So there's something funny in the water, I think, in the lieutenant governor's office. But then also, it's
because you don't really do anything, and idle hands make for right. What is
devil's playground?
Yeah, exactly.
But it has been a little bit of a political lottery ticket, a scratch off, where David Patterson and Kathy Hochul, they won. They became governors. So there is that thing in the back of your mind that, hey, something could happen. My boss could get promoted or resign. And then suddenly I get the job.
But with Delgado, first of all, he's sort of recreated himself, right? He was a moderate when he won that congressional seat in a swing district in Hudson Valley. And then now he recreated himself as this far left candidate where he was running to the left of Kathy Hochul and running on tax increases for the wealthy and environmental regulations. But
he was
then he
trying to be Mamdani.
Yes.
He was just.
He was trying.
If
Yes,
Mamdani
he was trying
hadn't
to
have won, like
tap
I don't
into
know if
same
that would have
energy.
been his platform. I feel like the tax the rich slogan, and obviously getting India Walton, that was all a post Mamdani victory.
But also, he's running on the left, but doesn't have the support of anyone on the left. Right? There's no way he didn't get the Mamdani endorsement. He didn't get the Working Families Party. There was like a couple of state lawmakers, Jabari Brisport, who had endorsed him, but he didn't have support. And he's gonna have to go raise money, like you said. He had to go get 15,000 signatures. It made no
And
sense.
it's not just 15,000 signatures; it's a certain amount of signatures in each
different
county.
part, right. Exactly. It's
all
very
across
onerous.
the state. Like
I mean,
North Country, obviously, to Suffolk County.
his blueprint may have been Zephyr Teachout's blueprint, who was sort of unknown at the time and got about a third of the vote against Andrew Cuomo in a Democratic primary. The difference was Teachout was a much better candidate, and there was more Democratic dissatisfaction with the governor at Cuomo than there is with Hochul. And the great barometer of it, I think, is Mamdani's endorsement, which came pretty readily. This is obviously very good news for Hochul. I don't think she was worried about losing to Delgado, but I think she was worried about being distracted, having to move her message to the left, and then having to recalibrate back to the center. Now she can stay more center left, which is her comfort zone anyways. So I think she's just relieved that she doesn't have to worry about this. Do I have to debate this guy? And do I have to how much money do I have to blow in my primary campaign that I could have held on to for the
She
general?
has $20 million in the bank now, and there's new campaign finance rules this time around for the first time for the governor's race. So when we used to be able to raise $70K from individuals, it's only 18 now, which is still obviously a huge amount of money in comparison to all of the limits you have all across the state, even for president. But she would have to raise a lot more, considering how much money she has.
Yeah, and that would have helped Delgado to have the matching funds. But I mean, just stepping back for a minute, I think, and we'll talk about the Republican candidate, but Kathy Hochul, like, remember you rewind a couple years, and she had a very shaky couple of years after she became governor, and in 2022 she came sort of close to losing, or at least had
6
a much
points.
more unexpectedly close race against Lee Zeldin than anybody was expecting. Crime was up, and even like a year ago, you had Richie Torres, the Democratic congressman from the Bronx, who was going to run against her in a primary and was trashing her like almost on a daily basis. You had Elise Stefanik and Mike Lawler thinking about running against her. Of course, Stefanik did run against her for a minute before she dropped out. She seemed so vulnerable. Her poll numbers were low. And now all of a sudden, in the past, year, she's just completely sort of righted the ship. And she could not be in a better position right now for re-election.
I think it's the Trump effect. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Donald Trump is in office, so Democrats are kind of circling around her, supporting her, perhaps don't want to rock the ship as much as they would in a contentious Democratic primary. And she's done kind of well against Trump. She's been able to do that balancing act.
Straddle
Yeah.
the fence that
Yeah.
he'll take her calls, she'll talk with him, she'll sort of trash him in public, but he gets a kick out of it from what he said in one interview. And I agree. I mean, she was an accidental incumbent 4 years ago. She was not elected governor, and now she has been, and that also helps her as well. I agree that her political stock is very high right now, but as we all know, 8 months is an eternity in politics. The problem, and we'll get to Blakeman, I think, in a second.
We can get to Blakeman now.
Well, the problem for Blakeman is I almost feel like part of the political strategy is like hoping that something happens. And that's bad. If you're a football team, like, well, maybe the other quarterback will get hurt. That's not a winning strategy. That's just more of a prayer than a real plan.
So Bruce Blakeman did accept he became the designee of the Republican Party this week in a convention that actually lasted more than one day, unlike the Democrats, in Garden City, obviously his home turf on Long Island. It didn't come without its
Stumbles.
I did the morning show on Monday, and I was talking all about Giardino, about how you pronounce Sheriff Giardino from Fulton County, which is north for people unlike Bob Hardt who don't know anything about upstate. I had to look it up. Where's Fulton?
Well, it's outside of Albany.
Yeah,
it's just
to
outside.
the left.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a map to the west. Yes, you know what I mean when I said left. You look at a map and it's to the left. Okay. Anyway. So I did this whole spiel on morning television on Monday about this guy, did my research, talked about him, yada, yada. And then within, I think, an hour, that was completely obsolete because he had told Blakeman that he didn't want the job. And Blakeman, a day before he accepts the nomination as his party's person for the gubernatorial race, the statewide race, is scrambling to find somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, when you name your running mate, or at least the news gets out about your running mate.
Yeah, to the Post is probably.
And then it turns out the guy doesn't want the job. That is like such a bad look and an embarrassing start for the week where he's going to be coronated at the convention.
Well, the twist was that Giardino at one point was also a former DA, which is interesting. Toyed with the idea of running as a independent maverick or Republican maverick presidential candidate. And Laura Loomer, who's this internet activist ally of Donald Trump's, found this out and went on social media and trashed Blakeman and said, I can't believe you're going to be naming this person. This just shows that you're just a placeholder candidate against Kathy Hochul. And Laura Loomer basically, I think, tainted Giardino so much that he said, I don't want this because he doesn't want to get doxxed or harassed. So what did Blakeman do? He went from one small county sheriff to another small county sheriff. So he picks Madison County Sheriff Todd Hood. And I was so curious. Madison County is, by the way, between Syracuse and Utica. Upstate geography quiz will be after the podcast. But the thing that's so interesting to me is like, well, how many people live in Madison County? And it's 68,000. And I'm like, what's the average size of a police precinct by population in New York City? And it's anywhere from 70,000 to 150,000. So it's basically like he's like a commander of a small precinct in New York City. And we saw this last time 4 years ago, right, with Allison Esposito was the running mate of Lee Zeldin on the Republican ticket, and she was a former precinct commander in New York City. Ironically, she might have oversaw more people in her precinct than Hood does right now.
Right. It's wild, though, that Laura Loomer can torpedo this guy's candidacy. I mean, she is like
powerful.
She torpedoes a lot of things.
Yeah.
And she's very close to Trump. And I mean, calling her an activist is kind of kind.
Well,
right?
when I say activist, I mean like she's like immediately going to the keyboard and like, what do I know about this person?
I think calls herself an investigative journalist.
She is she is very good at like going
digging stuff up. Obviously, yeah.
Okay, so he did select an LG candidate. They all showed up in Garden City. He delivered this address accepting the nomination, and Bruce Blakeman did. And what I found interesting about the address is...
And he played the video.
Oh, yes, we forgot. Yes, he did. He was endorsed by Donald Trump. There was a video that Trump made for it. It was played about how Blakeman was so wonderful, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I mean, they know each other. They've known each other for a long time. Yeah.
I mean, I think that was part... I mean, we talked about this on the podcast before, but I think there was also some of the strife and why Stefanik dropped out is because Trump was still praising Blakeman, even though Stefanik thought that she was going to be getting this endorsement from him.
Right.
Which I don't even think is necessarily a good thing in a statewide race in New York.
Well, we'll see.
We can talk about that. I want to talk briefly, just Blakeman went out with this address leading with affordability. You would think that with the sheriff on the ticket, he would be creating this campaign, this platform that was all about law enforcement and about public safety. But I think he read the tea leaves and said, I need to lead off with what New Yorkers actually do care about right now. I know we care about public safety too, but polling has shown that number one priority here is about affordability.
Yeah, although the framing, coming from his perspective is completely different than the affordability framing you hear from Democrats.
He doesn't want to give free buses.
Clearly, and he doesn't want government-run grocery stores. But he's talking about, how Kathy Hochul raised taxes and energy costs are too high. I mean, he runs through all of the Republican talking points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, he's also... It's kind of all over the place. Like he hit Kathy Hochul on congestion pricing.
Mm-hmm.
He's also made transports a big
I was just
issue
going to mention that.
in Nassau County.
Here, yeah.
And he talked about how she's like spending money on migrants and that giveaway. There was one line. It always gets me when Donald Trump used to do this, where he says crime is up, and I'm like, crime is not.
Crime
up.
is actually not up.
You can't just say that crime is up
Also
and then
says
blame it on Kathy Hochul.
Nassau County is the safest place in the entire United States. I think that was in his launch video, which
Yeah.
I know that we need to fact check because I don't know if that is true.
Yeah. Well, we always say leadership in New York City always says New York is the safest big city in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure that that's true either. I don't know what the metrics are for that. But anyway,
Probably spin the numbers any which way you want to get that.
But yeah, affordability has become the magic word in every political race in the country all of a sudden. But Blakeman is he has a lot of different themes beyond that, and public safety being one of them, with having these sheriffs as his running mates.
I thought it was a very good Republican speech.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is New York isn't a Republican state. I think that at an RNC, Republican National Convention, giving a speech like this is just dandy. You need to find the disaffected Democrats and independent voters to come on your side, and talking about transports isn't the way to do it. What you said is exactly right. The mantra has to be affordability. That has to be the talking point, not the other stuff. The culture war stuff might play well in some states, and especially red states. That can't be what you're getting at. It has to be, obviously, he went after Hochul, which you have to do, and it has to talk about how Republicans are going to make New York more affordable than Democrats. The other stuff, I think, is only going to hurt him. When Errol Lewis asked him about ICE on Inside City Hall, it was politically, it was way too pro-ICE, given what's going on in Minneapolis. Polls show that even Republicans, while they're very pro, we have to shut down the border, are raising a lot of red flags about what's going on in Minneapolis. And that's another thing Blakeman has to come up with, is a better ICE answer.
Yeah, I mean, Blakeman, I'm not bullish on Bruce Blakeman, but he has room to grow, right? I mean, he's
great. No, I totally agree.
He's down. What was it? 24 points,
54 to
26 points
28
in the last week, in the poll last week.
Siena poll that was on the 3rd.
But he's not known statewide, right? So he has room to define himself, and he is, if you look at him, from a certain angle, he is a moderate, right? He's pro-abortion rights. And he has, he won in Nassau County appealing to, and he had some crossover appeal to Democrats. He's not like a fire-breathing MAGA Republican, even in spite of the fact that he has tied himself closely to
I feel
Trump.
like sometimes he sounds like one.
I felt that he has actually done a little bit of mini MAGA on Nassau County, more than he used to.
The transport stuff. He's the only place in the country. Well, not in the country. Sorry, one of the only places in the state that's deputized his police force as ICE agents, saying that they can do what ICE, like that, the agreements that Hochul has been trying to get rid of. And
it's about a dozen counties in the state, including Nassau. Yeah, I don't think that's his true color, but I think that was sort of his political blueprint in Nassau for a while, was doing mini MAGA stuff. He has to move away from that. It's not like Stefanik, who really, any way that she could have tried to distance herself from Trump, good luck with that. I think that he's really, really going to have to move to the center to try to win. Lee Zeldin came sort of close to Hochul, but that was, like I said before, that was when Hochul had never won a statewide election on her own before.
Yeah. Okay, let's leave it there for now. When we come back, we're going to talk about Mamdani's trip to Albany.
I understand what your job is, but I'm telling you what my job is that these people have genuine concerns, and when they hear the things you're saying, they're like, uh-oh, it means I'm getting even less because I can't compete with that type of power. I can't compete with the power that exists.
I think that for too long we've treated the pie as if it can only ever remain the same. And what we're also talking about is increasing revenues by taxing the wealthiest that little bit more. Millionaires who aren't sending $20,000 to Dunkirk.
I'm fine increasing taxes on millionaires and the rich as long as the people of Buffalo and Dunkirk also get help too.
So this is an annual tradition. Every mayor, since forever, maybe not forever. I look at Bob because I feel like he's the person that knows all
I don't know.
For a long time, every year, mayors go up to Albany to beg for money in the state budget. It's known as Tin Cup Day because you envision the mayor going up there with a
Rattling
tin cup,
around his tin cup. Yeah.
asking for money. So Mamdani obviously has experience in Albany. Yes, he was a backbench assembly person, but he went in there at least knowing who the audience was. And miraculously, he went in there with another $5 billion that just came out of left field. So 2 weeks ago, Mamdani said that the city was facing, over a 2-year period, a $12 billion budget deficit, akin to the Great Recession is how he characterized it, which to many observers is kind of scary. And then all of a sudden, he's delivering this testimony in Albany saying things are better. $5 billion has come in. Now it's only $7 billion.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to say about it. First of all, the fact we call it Tin Cup Day is funny to me because it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds almost kind of charming or something, like him walking around rattling. And in fact, it's just this grueling, like 4-hour legislative hearing where he's sitting at a table and getting grilled by lawmakers on like all kinds of questions, not even just
and not even just from
budget.
New York City, from like all across the state.
Right. I think it does help him, by the way, that even though he was, a backbencher and very low-profile assemblyman, he knows how Albany works, and he also has good relationships. I mean, you even saw it with Republicans,
Unlike Eric Adams, who was a state senator,
and he's walking around and like talking to people. I mean, he's nothing if not charming, right? So he has relationships even with Republicans, and I don't know. I don't know how far that gets him in getting taxes raised on the wealthy, but the strategy I've been struggling even just in the past 24 hours as I've been rolling this around in my mind. He came out, 2 weeks ago with this apocalyptic press conference saying we have this $12 billion budget gap.
It's concerning.
And then, I guess the idea seemed to be you're raising the alarms. We need money from Albany. We need to raise taxes on the wealthy. But then to come out yesterday on Wednesday and say, well, actually, it's only $7 billion. I guess he's trying to show, well, even if we, find $1 billion worth of savings, and even after we found that revenue came in higher than expected, we still have a $7 billion gap, and we still need the money. But I feel like, certainly based on some of the news coverage from Wednesday, it didn't seem to work. Like it almost has the opposite effect, where people are saying, well, you were being misleading and you were overstating the problem, and then you lose credibility.
I was just going to say that.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it works, but it didn't. The message didn't quite seem to land.
But then you become the mayor who cried wolf.
Right.
And then how can I believe you? And I was joking like, hey, if we wait long enough, we're going to have a surplus. The fact that the number moves so dramatically in such a short amount of time makes the mayor not look believable. I ran into Andrew Ryan from the Citizens Budget Commission this morning here in the newsroom, and he said they thought the Citizens Budget Commission thought that the number was around $8 billion. He said this was 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So this number sounds more real, but I still don't know why the mayor had to put out the number, except maybe if you have a crisis, then you need a solution to a crisis.
And I think part of the issue, too, is that he said a couple of billion are from, I guess maybe $3 billion are from the higher than expected revenues, including Wall Street bonuses and other general tax revenue. And that gives the impression that they were somehow being disingenuous by announcing this big shortfall 2 weeks ago when they knew this money was coming in. And I think if he had come out and said, well, we're doing, X amount of savings or even cuts, but he doesn't want to characterize them as cuts. So we're doing all we can, and it only gets us to $7 billion. That would be another thing, but that's not really what he did, and he's not even specifying what the $1 billion in savings are. He has another week before he presents the budget on the 17th to get more specific. But also, I don't know how it's going to look on the 17th. Does he come out and say, we can close the $7 billion gap with cuts, or does he have a placeholder that says if we get X amount of tax increases, that would fill? I don't know. I don't know how he does it and how he plays it.
I don't think. Legally, can he put something in the budget that isn't guaranteed? Can he say, yeah, right? I think legally it needs to be a balanced budget according to the city charter. So I don't think he could say, we're going to get this tax increase from Albany on millionaires, so we're going to get this extra money, and that's what we're going to be spending. It needs to be balanced.
They all know, the Mamdani team in City Hall, they know that this tax proposal is pretty much dead on arrival. What I want to know is, well, what's their plan B? And they can't really show their hand because then you're ruining everything. But they must have I think they would have a plan because between the legislature all being up for re-election and the governor being up for re-election, the appetite for raising taxes, even on millionaires, is very, very low.
Yeah, I was talking to our Bernadette Hogan, who was obviously up there covering it for us in Albany, and she was saying even the head of the Assembly and the Senate aren't really pushing this. I mean, yes, the legislature has typically been in favor of raising taxes on the wealthy, but this year it is just not at the top of the list. It's not a priority, and she doesn't expect them to push it for Mamdani.
He does.
So then what does he do?
Well, he has this kind of this two-pronged messaging, which is we need to raise taxes on the wealthy, but also we're not getting our fair share from Albany. We've been getting screwed for years because we send more money to Albany than we get back. And that makes me think that there's room for some kind of compromise where there is some funding stream that gets redirected to the city, and it's probably not a tax increase on the wealthy because we've seen Kathy Hochul is so adamant that she's not going to budge on this. But there might be money somewhere else that he can claim. Maybe not claim a full victory, but say, at least we're getting more from the state.
The danger for Hochul is you can't make it look like you're reapportioning the pie to New York City in an election year. That's the thing. They have to be able to find more money, period, like you said. Because otherwise, if they start carving the pie differently, it's politically perilous.
And you saw it yesterday. You saw it yesterday with these upstate lawmakers who are, they're questioning Mamdani, like, you want tax increases and this money's going to go to New York City. What about upstate cities? I mean,
What about Buffalo? What
yeah,
about Syracuse?
and you
What
have
about
the
Rochester?
and there's real problems in all the cities. It's just there's fewer people.
They were there yesterday too,
Yeah.
right? They came and gave the same spiel that they needed more help from the state.
What didn't come up in the hearing that much, at least, was the free bus program. I wonder if that's just total back burner, not going to happen. This is also an opportunity. Tin Cup Day is an opportunity for Mamdani to really lay out his legislative agenda. And his legislative agenda appeared to be raising taxes on the wealthy, to obviously fund his child care program. And he was asked about the bus program during the press conference and the media availability he had after, but it wasn't something that was, it didn't just feel like it was at the top of the agenda.
But they're trying to, this is a smart move by the Mamdani City Hall, which is they're trying to now repackage this around the World Cup.
Yeah.
Which I think is really smart. Because then you get your foot in the door, and sometimes when you get your foot in the door, you can open the door more and say, "Oh, look, it worked so well during the World Cup that we should expand this." So I think it is smart to come up with a gimmick, and this is their gimmick. Like, oh, we're not going to get the buses. Well, maybe if we put it around soccer or something.
Well, and the gimmick was to do a pilot only during the World Cup, which is like 4 or 5 weeks. I think,
it's for about 5 weeks. Yeah,
for just to have free buses during that time, which would still be like $100 million, which cost. The problem with that, though, I was thinking about this, like you have free buses for 5 weeks. It's very hard to tell people they don't have to pay. And then now you have to, again, have to go back to pay.
But they did do that on the pilot lines. There was a pilot program, and so some people lived on those lines and then got free buses and now lost them. The thing, though, is I ride the bus semi-regularly with our daughter. I'm taking her to school some days. No one's paying on that bus. When it's really crowded, like no one is. So it already is sort of de facto. And to try to do enforcement on that bus filled with school kids and their parents would be like impossible.
Yeah. But he didn't talk about it yesterday. I mean, this was reported, I think it was in the Daily News first the other day about the World Cup pilot.
Right.
But then he didn't talk about it yesterday, even when he was asked about it, I think, at the news conference. So yes, you're right that doesn't seem to be high on the priority list. And understandably, if you're saying you have this enormous budget shortfall and you need to raise taxes, but also we want all this money for free buses, I think that's a hard sell.
I think the overall sense of his appearance in Albany this week, at least the way the Times played it, was, and I guess how we're playing it, is the honeymoon period is over. I know I said the honeymoon period was over last week with related to the polls,
I think
that was like real.
But I don't think like people in New York City are like, oh, he didn't do well in Albany. He stinks. It's more about the snow and not the blizzard, but the aftermath of the blizzard.
Right.
When the history is written about the Mamdani administration, this will be part of the first chapter, that there was this unprecedented cold after a blizzard that has just left the streets in Rockaway, for example, when I'm walking on the sidewalk, there's still sidewalks that are dangerous to walk on.
And he got questions about that
Right.
yesterday, right? Which, again, it's like you're going to get hammered on all kinds of stuff, not just budget questions.
Right.
Okay, I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. You can always watch us on Inside City Hall on weeknights at 7 o'clock. We love your feedback. You can send us an email at yourstorynewark1@charter.com if you like what you're hearing. You can subscribe to Off Topic wherever you get your podcasts, and you can leave us a review. Thanks to our producer today, Richie Agostinoni. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.